John Cage was born in 1912 and died in 1992. He's considered one of the most important American experimental composers of the 20th century, but he had a variety of interests and connected with many people outside of the music field. A known fact in Cage studies that is often mentioned but at the same time neglected is his interest in mushrooms. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Cage amassed an impressive library of mycological texts. In fact, his curiosity with the subject was so strong that he revived the defunct New York Mycological Society in 1962. As you can see by this photo, there's Cage with the first meeting of the Mycological Society. In 1963, Cage began a lecture series for the Mycological Society where he invited W. Stephen Thomas, who was the president of the Thoreau Society, to give a lecture which he titled Henry David Thoreau, Amateur Mycologist. And he invited a lot of people. When I go through the archives, I find one of the kind of interesting dialogues was between Rachel Carson and John Cage, but she was really busy that year and politely declined that invitation. On your right, you can see that Cage by 1966 became an honorary member of the New York Mycological Society. He really rebuilt the society in many ways. But by 1964, Cage was given the North American Mycological Association's Award for Contributions to Amateur Mycology, which is really given annually to recognize a person who's contributed extraordinarily to the advancement of amateur mycology. In 1965, UC Santa Cruz was born as an answer to California's post-war baby boom and to the criticism of the UC system being seen as a large and impersonal or more interested in research than teaching university. The concept between UC Santa Cruz was considered innovative at the time as it consisted of small, semi-autonomous colleges where students lived and studied together in contemporary residencies. In this non-traditional environment, an experimental arts workshop was conceived in 1969. This new program brought avant-garde artists such as John Cage, Merce Cunningham, Alan Capro, George Machunas, and George Chagall to perform and also lecture on education. This was Cage's first connection to the university. When Cage would visit UC Santa Cruz, he'd go foraging for mushrooms with two people. The first was Norman O. Brown, an influential humanities professor. They both met at Wesleyan University in 1960 before Brown was hired in UC Santa Cruz in 1968. The second was Alan Chadwick. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the Chadwick Gardens. Chadwick was a pioneering horticulturalist and worked in UC Santa Cruz from 1967 through 1972. Brown introduced the two, and in 1969, Cage spent a day hunting mushrooms with Chadwick and was immediately inspired by his work. Cage was so impressed that he later wrote about Chadwick and his students, "These people live, others haven't even been born." He was really referring to the community's innovative gardening techniques while also referencing UC Santa Cruz's unconventional approach to education. By 1971, Cage became so busy teaching, giving interviews, touring, and writing music and poetry that he needed to store his collection. His thriving relationship with UC Santa Cruz, mixed with his foraging experiences, made UC Santa Cruz the most suitable place for this material. Unfortunately, in current scholarship, when Cage donated his archive, scholars suggest that from the 1970s onwards, he'd given up on mycology. While Cage may have not been as involved in the Mycological Society after the 1970s, his correspondence flourished. He received copious amounts of mail where various scholars and artists referred to him for his mycological knowledge, sent him new information on the field, or simply sent him nice messages. For example, in 1975, the California-based artist Claudia Chaplin sent Cage an old drawing of a mushroom telling him of her appreciation of his work. Further, Sabina Leibner, a pianist known for playing new music, sent Cage an article informing him of the dangers when foraging in Germany after the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. Also, you can see there's a nice happy birthday message from his publisher in New York City, Don Gillespie, on that also. So this 15-box collection in the UC Santa Cruz archive is one of three main places that Cage's materials exist, and the only one that specifically has most of his mycological collection. I've given a brief introduction to Cage, mycology, and the special collections. Unfortunately, little scholarship has been dedicated to this topic, but its rich context provides a new forum for further discussion. In conclusion, by conducting research on this subject, I will publish several articles in various journals. By doing this, I will fill a lacuna in the musicological literature and also promote awareness of not only this collection, but of the many gems we have here in our local university library. Thank you.